In this third video on government fraud and waste, I'll discuss how waste is created as a result of new programs and legislation, specifically with FTEs. An FTE is a full-time equivalency, or the cost of a full-time employee. Every time someone writes legislation that costs something, the House fiscal staff conducts interviews with all the state departments that would be impacted and ask what they would charge to implement this new law or program. Part of their cost is in FTEs to administer it. For example, let's look at House File 5, the bill that would create a state-mandated and administered paid family leave program. The fiscal note on this bill estimates that we would need to spend $815 million over the first 2 years just to get things up and running, before it even starts to redistribute people's paycheck dollars. But this program really ramps up in 2023. The Department of Revenue says it would need 1.5 FTEs, and the Supreme Court would need 52.5 FTEs. And the Labor and Industry Department would need 27 FTEs. Now, DEED, the Department of Employment and Economic Development, would employ and economically develop 315 new FTEs. Yes, that's 396 total new bureaucrats costing $40 million a year. So what happens if House File 5 passes and is signed into law? Well, the money would start to flow to these departments based on this fiscal note. Jobs may be posted, interviews may take place, maybe 150 or 200 FTEs are hired. Maybe they stop at 200. What happens to the other $20 million a year for the other 200 FTEs? Well, it just gets added to the department's budget. Now, they can spend it on FTEs or they can buy new software, because computers are kind of like an FTE, or they can spend it on related programs. But the bottom line is that there's no verification or follow-through that the FTEs were actually hired or needed. The fiscal note it's a good faith estimate, but in the private industry, we call it a swag, scientific wild-ass guess, right? It's a swag. But unlike the private industry, these are taxpayer dollars, and we need more oversight. Thankfully, we have a bill which is going after this fraud. I'm a co-author of House File 1920. Which eliminates FTEs that haven't been filled for more than 6 months, and it requires all state agencies to report back on whether they have actually filled an FTE for a position for which they receive funding. It also claws this money back so that should not have been appropriated in the first place. This is the type of reforms that we need in government. We have government that grows by 4% a year, and we're asking taxpayers for more money? That's ridiculous. There is so much money in St. Paul, but we need to first go after this abuse of taxpayer dollars within the existing programs.